In the remote Alaskan wilderness, where the shadows of ancient forests meet the raging tides of the Kenai Peninsula, there is a ghost town shrouded in mystery and fear. This is the story of Portlock, a place where folklore and reality intertwine to create a chilling tale of terror and disappearance. The story begins in 1973, when three seasoned outdoorsmen, Ed, Dennis, and Joe, set out on a hunting and hiking expedition into the heart of the Alaskan wilderness. Their destination was isolated Dogfish Bay, a remote area at the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula. They were prepared for the harsh conditions, confident in their skills and equipment. However, the weather had other plans. A fierce storm rolled in, turning the bay into a sea of rain and fierce wind. Forced to set up camp in the middle of the storm, the trio huddled in their tent, hoping for a clear morning. The night passed peacefully until around 2 a.m., when Ed was awakened by Dennis, who squeezed his leg and motioned for him to be quiet. Dennis's face was etched with worry, his eyes wide with fear. Ed listened closely and heard an unpleasant noise just outside their tent, the snapping of it. At first, Ed thought it was a bear, but the sound was different. The footsteps were too heavy, too cautious, and they circled the tent as if something, or someone, was lurking around them. The men held their breath, straining to hear any movement. The sound stopped just outside their tent, and after a few tense moments, the footsteps faded into silence. Too afraid to investigate, the men finally fell asleep, exhaustion overcoming their fear. By morning, they dismissed the incident as a figment of their imaginations or the result of a wandering bear or moose. They decided not to mention it to Joe, fearing it would only add to their growing anxiety. Although the weather was improving, they decided to stay another night in the bay, taking precautions by loading their rifles and carrying flashlights. That night at 2:30 a.m., Ed was awakened again by Dennis, who was visibly shaking. Joe sat up, clutching his rifle, his face pale with fear. The footsteps were back, circling the tent in the same strange, heavy rhythm. The men were paralyzed with fear, but after exchanging silent nods, they decided to face whatever lay outside. Armed with rifles and flashlights, they rushed out of the tent into the darkness. The forest was eerily silent, with no trace of the intruder. The men searched the area but found no footprints or signs of a disturbance. Exhausted and unnerved, they stayed up all night, waiting for the mysterious visitor to return. When dawn broke, they packed up and left, deciding to return home rather than continue their journey. Years later, Ed stumbled across an old Alaskan sports magazine while leafing through the pages. A newspaper article caught his attention, a report about the very area where he and his friends had spent that fateful night. The article described a once thriving fishing village called Portlock, now a ghost town. The article told a chilling tale of missing workers and mysterious disappearances, allegedly caused by a large, hairy man who lived deep in the woods. The article was dated 1935, but it mentioned an earlier mass exodus from the village due to the terrifying presence of the stubble man. Workers at the cannery had begun disappearing, their bodies discovered in the surrounding wilderness. Locals spoke of a creature resembling the Yeti, and fear of the entity kept people away from the once populous settlement. The story of Portlock, or Port Chatham as it is sometimes called, begins in 1786 with Captain Nathaniel Portlock of the Royal Navy. Portlock's positive reports of the area led to growing interest, but it was not until the early 20th century that a formal settlement was established. A fishing company set up operations, followed by a cannery and many other businesses. Portlock quickly became a thriving community, although its development was marred by strange and disturbing events. In 1905, mysterious disappearances and grisly discoveries were reported around Portlock. Bodies were found dismembered, leading to a mass exodus of workers from the cannery. Rumors of a terrifying creature in the woods spread, with armed guards deployed to escort workers out of the area. Although the workers returned only briefly, the disturbing stories continued, and fear of the hairy man continued to plague the community. In 1923, a local resident named Sergius Moonin reported a creepy encounter. While walking near the shore with his girlfriend, they heard a loud, high-pitched whistling sound, a sound believed to be the Nantianak, a creature of local legend. They soon saw a large, hairy figure walking along the beach, carrying what appeared to be a branch or a stick. The sight terrified them, and they rushed home, but their accounts were dismissed by others. Over time, reports of the creature and strange happenings continued. Local fishermen saw ghostly children on the playa, only to discover them missing minutes later. A logger named Andrew Camlock was found dead under mysterious circumstances, his body mutilated and covered in blood. Another searcher disappeared without a trace, adding to the growing list of unexplained disappearances. By the late 1940s, the town of Portlock was in serious decline. Rumors of disappearances and sightings of the creature, combined with the town's isolation and financial difficulties, led to the abandonment of the settlement. The last residents of the town had left, leaving only the postmaster, who eventually left. The official explanation for Portlock's abandonment was less grim. The construction of Alaska Route 1 and the relocation of industries to more accessible locations made Portlock financially unsustainable. What remained of the village was overtaken by nature, and the once thriving community was left to rot. Yet the legends of Portlock persist. Tales of the hairy man, mysterious apparitions, and unexplained phenomena continue to intrigue and terrify those who hear them. Despite efforts to investigate, many stories remain shrouded in uncertainty and myth. The few surviving records are often incomplete or contradictory, leaving the true nature of events at Portlock open to speculation. As the decades have passed, the Portlock legend has continued to grow, gaining new layers of mystery and intrigue with each retelling. Local legends persist, intertwined with tales of ghosts and unexplained phenomena. Some claim to hear strange whispers in the wind, while others swear they see figures moving through the trees at dusk. In the early 2000s, a group of amateur ghost hunters decided to investigate the abandoned town of Portlock, trying to uncover the truth behind the haunting. They arrived with high hopes and state-of-the-art equipment, Cameras, EVP, electronic voice phenomena, recorders, and infrared sensors, determined to capture evidence of the supernatural. The team set up camp in what was left of the old town square, surrounded by crumbling buildings and dense vegetation. As night fell, the atmosphere became tense. The air was thick with anticipation, and the dense forest loomed ominously in the back. The investigators took turns exploring different areas of the town, hoping to capture any paranormal activity. Their first night was uneventful, no ghostly voices or apparitions. However, as the second night approached, the group's mood shifted from excitement to concern. The weather also seems to reflect their growing unease. A thick fog rolls in, shrouding the town in a ghostly veil. Around midnight, the group begins to experience strange phenomena. The temperature suddenly drops and their equipment begins to malfunction. Cameras flicker on and off, and the EVP recorder picks up strange, distorted sounds that none of them can explain. One member of the group, Sarah, feels an overwhelming sense of dread, as if she is being watched by invisible eyes. Desperate for answers, the group decides to investigate the old cannery, the epicenter of the town's original fear. The building, now a skeleton of rust and decay, carries an eerie presence. They set up their cameras and begin their exploration, their footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. Outside, the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The group scattered, each member using their own equipment to scan for anomalies. As Sarah made her way deeper into the building, she stumbled upon an old ledger, its pages yellowed with age. The ledger contained disturbing entries, tales of disappearances, strange sightings, and frantic notes from workers detailing their fears of the bushy man. Suddenly, Sarah's flashlight flickered, and a shadowy figure appeared at the edge of her vision. She quickly turned, but there was nothing there, just the oppressive darkness of the abandoned cannery. Her heart pounded, and she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. She tried to call out to the others, but her voice caught in her throat. In a panic, Sarah rushed toward the group of people gathered near the entrance. They were reviewing footage from their cameras, and one of the team members, Mark, noticed something amiss. In one of the recordings, a dark, humanoid shape could be seen moving rapidly across the screen, its shape barely distinguishable from the surrounding darkness. The team decided to leave the cannery and review their findings. They packed up their gear and headed back to the campsite, but the feeling of being watched never left them. As they sat around the campfire, discussing their experiences, they heard a loud noise coming from the nearby woods. The noise was followed by a series of heavy, purposeful footsteps. Terrified and exhausted, the team decided to cut their investigation short. They packed up and left Portlock, the eerie atmosphere of the haunted town still fresh in their memories. Despite their best efforts, they have yet to find conclusive evidence of the supernatural, but the disturbing experiences they have encountered are enough to convince them that Portlock is indeed a dark and persistently mysterious. Over the years, Portlock has remained a subject of fascination for both amateur and professional paranormal investigators. Tales of the haired man, ghosts, and mysterious disappearances continue to garner attention. The abandoned town, with its crumbling buildings and leafy streets, has become a symbol of the unknown, a place where fact and legend intertwine in unsettling ways. The legend of Portlock, with its blend of folklore and fact, serves as a reminder of the immense power that fear and mystery can have over the human imagination. Whether fueled by genuine supernatural forces or echoes of old-world legends, the town's haunting tales persist, a chilling testament to the unknown. The dark forests and abandoned buildings of Portlock remain a place where the line between fact and myth blurs, and where echoes of the past continue to whisper their unsettling tales.